Hi, I'm Donna. My sister used to laugh and say, "Don't embarrass yourself," just because I dared to step onto a shooting range. They all watched, waiting for me to fail, cheering when I stumbled. But what hurt most wasn't the jokes, it was years of silent betrayal. Years of being the family's hidden shame. And when I finally fired my first shot, everything changed. But how deep did their betrayal really go? And what price did they pay when I refused to stay small? The restaurant was already buzzing when I pulled into the parking lot. Valerie's birthday. Of course, our parents had gone all out private room, white tablecloths, crystal glasses gleaming under soft lights. Typical. Everything Valerie touched had to scream perfect, even if it hid the rot underneath. I walked in, my heels clicking too loudly on the polished floor. Heads turned briefly, polite smiles, quick glances, then back to ignoring me. I caught my mother's tight look, my father's half-hearted nod. They showed up, but that was all. Valerie was already holding court, laughing too loudly, flipping her blonde hair. When she saw me, her smirk widened, that familiar look that always meant trouble. Dinner dragged on, a haze of overcooked steak and hollow conversation about promotions, renovations, kids in overpriced schools. I didn't belong. I never had. Then came the toast. Valerie stood, tapping her glass. "A toast to family courage," she said sweetly, her eyes locking onto mine. I froze, feeling the trap spring before she even finished. "To my dear sister Donna," she continued, voice dripping with false affection, "who's bravely trying a shooting competition." She laughed, sharp and brittle. "Let's just hope she doesn't shoot herself." Laughter exploded around the table, some genuine, some forced. Dad pressed his lips together to hide a grin. Mom studied her napkin like it held the secrets of the universe. Heat flushed my face, but I stayed still, clenched fists under the table, nails digging into palms. Not here. Not tonight. Valerie wasn't finished. "It's inspiring," she added mockingly, "to see Donna chase dreams, even if they're a bit out of her depth." The words cut deeper than any knife. No one defended me. Not one damn person. I lifted my glass slowly, took a sip. It tasted like ash. The rest of the night blurred fake smiles, mechanical nods, polite nothingness, survival mode, a routine I'd perfected. When I finally escaped into the cold night air, it felt like I could breathe again. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel. On the passenger seat lay the flyer. Boise Open Range Competition, March 30th. Open to all skill levels. Creased. Handled too many times. I stared at it, Valerie's smirk still fresh in my mind. The way they all looked right through me, like I was already a ghost. Maybe this time, I'd let my actions speak louder than their laughter. The days blurred into restless nights and second-guessing. But by week's end, I made a decision. I circled the competition date on my calendar, no more hiding, no more playing small. When April arrived, a sharp morning breeze cut through the Boise Sports Club parking lot. I tightened my jacket and stared at the sleek glass entrance. Inside, serious competitors moved with the calm precision of ex-military, retired law enforcement, seasoned sharpshooters, and me, a former accountant with a second-hand Glock and something to prove. I pushed open the door and approached the registration table. A woman handed me a clipboard without much fuss. I filled it out, my hands finally steady. While writing my name, a high-pitched laugh sliced through the room. I didn't need to look up. Well, look who made it out of Walmart!" Valerie's voice rang out like a shot. I froze, pen midair. She strutted into view, decked out in tactical gear that probably cost more than my car. Her entourage followed, grinning, whispering, forming a wall like they owned the place. "You here to watch the big kids play, Donna?" Valerie smirked. "Hope you remembered which end of the gun points forward." Snickers rippled through the lobby. Some glanced at me, pity, amusement, indifference. Heat crawled up my neck, but I stayed still. I finished signing my name slowly, deliberately. "Don't worry, everyone," Valerie added, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "My little sister's a real natural. If natural means hitting the ceiling instead of the target." More laughter. Someone muttered, "Poor thing." I could have walked out. It would have been easier. But instead, I breathed deep inhale control, exhale doubt, just like Caleb taught me. Without a word, I handed my form to the clerk and accepted my competition number. Then, just once, I met Valerie's gaze. No smile, no fear, just a look that said, "You don't know who you're dealing with anymore." Valerie's smirk faltered, only for a second, before she laughed too loudly and turned away. I slipped the laminated number into my jacket pocket and walked toward the shooting lanes. Each step felt heavier and somehow steadier, too. I wasn't there to prove anything to them, only to myself. I made my way to the waiting area, weaving past clusters of competitors warming up or chatting in tight circles. The air buzzed with a mix of competition nerves and casual camaraderie, except where I sat, alone. I found a chair near the edge of the room, tucked between a vending machine and a battered notice board covered in old event flyers. I slid into the seat, gripping my competition number tighter than necessary, the laminated edge digging into my palm. Around me, fathers clapped sons on the shoulder, friends compared gear, spouses gave last-minute pep talks. No one came over to me. No one even glanced my way. A laugh caught in my throat before I could stop it, bitter, small, helpless. How fitting. Even now, even here, I was still the outsider looking in. A familiar ache stirred under the surface, dredging up a memory I hadn't invited. I was 12 again, sitting alone at the edge of the bleachers during our middle school talent show. Rachel had promised she'd save me a seat. Best friends forever, she'd said. Pinky swear. But when I got there, the seats beside her were already filled. Valerie had beckoned Rachel up into her shiny new circle, the cool girls with matching glitter sneakers and whispered secrets, and Rachel had gone without a backward glance. I remembered standing there, hugging my science fair poster against my chest, pretending I didn't care, pretending I wasn't dying inside. Rachel had smiled at me once, small and guilty, then turned away, laughing louder at whatever Valerie had said. It wasn't some big betrayal. It wasn't screaming or slamming doors. It was worse, slow, silent abandonment. A quiet decision that I wasn't worth holding on to. That was the day I stopped believing in promises, and sitting here now, 15 years later, surrounded by teams and tribes I didn't belong to, the sting felt just as fresh. Different stage. Same emptiness. I shifted in my chair, brushing invisible dust from my jeans, refusing to let the memory rot me from the inside out. Not today. Because today wasn't about being picked. It wasn't about being wanted. It was about showing up. For me. The loudspeaker crackled overhead, yanking me out of the past. Competitor 47, please report to lane 12. I rose to my feet, not because I was ready, but because I refused to stay invisible any longer. As I made my way towards lane 12, I passed by the bleachers set up along the side of the range. A part of me, foolish and stubborn, scanned the rows for a familiar face. Maybe, just maybe, someone had come. Maybe Mom or Dad had changed their minds. Maybe, deep down, they were proud of me stepping out of the shadows. Hope is a funny thing. It sticks around long after it should have died. The stands were dotted with clusters of spectators' parents snapping photos, friends clapping backs, husbands and wives sharing whispered encouragement. Everyone seemed to have someone. Everyone, except me. And there, right near the front, Valerie sat draped across a metal bench like she owned it. Her group of friends flanked her like a royal court. She threw her head back, laughing at something one of them said. Right beside her, my parents sat stiffly, looking straight ahead, pretending not to see me. They didn't wave. They didn't smile. They didn't even nod. Nothing. Their silence was a roaring void, a message clearer than any shouted insult. You're not one of us. It was a punch to the gut in slow motion. One I should have seen coming, but stupidly, I'd hoped anyway. For a moment, my hands shook not from fear, but from the raw force of betrayal coursing through my veins. They hadn't just left me alone today. They'd been abandoning me for years. Tiny slights, small exclusions, choosing Valerie's spotlight over my quiet corner every single time. And I'd let them. Standing there in the middle of the concrete floor, with my competition number flapping against my jacket, I understood something I hadn't allowed myself to admit before. I wasn't losing them. I never really had them. Whatever bond I thought we shared had been slowly snipped away, thread by invisible thread, until nothing was left but polite obligation and strained smiles. I could have cried. I could have walked out. I could have disappeared, just like they clearly preferred. Instead, I turned my back on the bleachers and kept walking. If I was going to stand alone, I might as well stand tall. At the shooting lane, I set my bag down, took out my Glock, and began to load the magazine with steady, measured hands. No shaking, no second guessing. The speaker crackled overhead, announcing the start of the warm-up session. I adjusted my stance, locked my gaze downrange, and took my first deep breath of the afternoon. If they thought I'd crumble without their applause, they were about to be very disappointed. The scent of gun oil and cold metal filled the firing lane as I squared my shoulders and settled into my stance. My hands moved automatically, gripping, aligning, preparing, just like I had practiced 1,000 times in private. When I wrapped my fingers around the Glock, though, a sharp sense of wrongness prickled down my spine. The weight was off, subtle, almost imperceptible to anyone else. But not to me. The trigger felt sluggish under my finger, and the balance leaned awkwardly toward the muzzle. Something had been tampered with. I didn't need a detective to figure out who might have orchestrated it. Valerie's earlier laughter rang fresh in my mind, like the lingering sting of a slap. I rolled my shoulders back, forcing a calm I didn't feel. This wasn't just about a dirty trick anymore. This was a declaration. A move in a game she thought she could rig. Fine. Two could play. Slowly, deliberately, I adjusted my grip, rebalanced my posture, made micro-adjustments only someone who knew her weapon inside and out could manage under pressure. Around me, other competitors were firing off their warm-up round-squick bursts of sound and motion. I blocked it out, narrowing my world down to the steady rise and fall of my breath, the exact placement of my feet, the slight squeeze it would take to compensate for the heavier trigger pull. I aimed. I fired. The first shot struck lower than I'd expected, but still within the outer ring of the target. Not a miss. Not even close. A murmur ran through the competitors nearby, some of whom had been watching with half-interested glances, waiting for me to flail and fail. Instead, I simply realigned and fired again. This shot landed closer to center, and the next closer still. By the fifth round, I found a new rhythm, not the one I'd trained for, but one that adapted to the sabotage I hadn't planned for. When the practice session was called to a pause, I slid my weapon back into its holster with slow, deliberate movements. I turned, walking past the tables where competitors and families mingled, where Valerie lounged like a queen presiding over her court. I could have ignored her, kept walking, stayed small, but no. I let my steps slow just slightly as I passed, just enough. Valerie looked up from her phone, caught my eye, and for one glorious heartbeat, her perfectly rehearsed smile faltered. I offered her a razor-thin smile. No teeth, no warmth, just a quiet promise. You don't get to break me. She blinked, recovering a little too quickly, plastering on a smirk for her friends. But the crack had appeared, and once a crack formed, it only grew. I moved on, heart hammering in my chest not with fear, but with something far more potent. Resolve. She wanted a war? Fine, but she wouldn't like how I fought it. The moment my feet cleared Valerie's circle, I tightened the strap of my shooting gloves, mentally clicking into a different gear. It was no longer about proving anything. It was about reclaiming what they thought they could steal my control. At my lane, I flexed my fingers once, twice. The weight of the Glock was still off, but I'd already adapted. Instinct sharpened to a razor's edge. I breathed deep, steadying the chaos inside me. Adapt, overcome, win. Caleb's voice, calm and sure, echoed in my memory. He had drilled those words into me in another lifetime, back when the world felt safer, or at least more honest. The first round bell rang, crisp and merciless. I set my sights down range, exhaled, squeezed the trigger. The shot landed tight, not perfect, but close enough. I recalibrated without hesitation, shifting my weight slightly on the balls of my feet, letting the rhythm of recoil and readjustment flow through me. Second shot cleaner, third sharper, fourth almost dead center. The scores flickered briefly on the overhead screen. I caught a glimpse of murmurs rippling through the crowd, subtle shifts of posture, sidelong glances. Some curious, some grudgingly impressed. I blocked it out. This wasn't about them. This was about standing in my own skin, unashamed, untouchable. The announcer's voice crackled through the PA system, listing rankings so far. My name rose higher than I'd dared to hope. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Valerie staring, not laughing now, but tight-lipped and narrowed-eyed, like she'd just bitten into something rotten. Good. Let her taste defeat before it even arrived. Reloading, I made no effort to hide the confidence sharpening my movements. Every click, every chambered round spoke for me. You tried to bury me, but you forgot I'm the seed. I lifted my eyes across the range, letting them find hers. No smugness, no theatrics, just pure, quiet defiance. Her friends nudged her, whispering something I couldn't hear, but Valerie didn't take her gaze off me. For the first time, she looked uncertain. I finished loading, set my jaw, took my place. The final qualifying round loomed harder, faster, less forgiving. I could feel the energy shifting, a different kind of storm gathering. If she thought she'd shaken me before, she was about to learn just how dangerous a woman could become when she had nothing left to lose and nothing left to prove. The air inside the lounge buzzed differently now, a low, uncomfortable murmur weaving through the crowd like static. I peeled off my gloves and headed toward the water station, trying to stay loose for the next round. But the tension clung to me like humidity before a storm. Every step, every glance from strangers felt heavier. A couple huddled near the snack table shot me a sideways look, whispering behind cupped hands. She couldn't have pulled that off. Not without some trick, I caught a woman's voice hiss, brittle with suspicion. Another man chuckled under his breath. Maybe it's her lucky day. Or maybe, just maybe, it was called hard work, something people like Valerie and her entourage wouldn't recognize if it slapped them across the face. I kept moving, pretended not to notice, pretended it didn't land. It did. The hallway toward the admin offices glowed with fluorescent light, too harsh, too sterile. That's when I saw Valerie standing smugly at the counter, filing paperwork. Her voice was pitched just loud enough for the receptionist and anyone else nearby to hear. Just concerned about fairness, she said sweetly, handing over a form. I mean, it's not every day someone jumps from novice to top tier in one afternoon. Concerned about fairness, from Valerie. That almost made me laugh out loud. Before I could turn away, an official clipboard clutched against his chest like a shield approached me. Miss Weaver, could we have a word? Of course. They led me to a back room lined with dusty trophies and worn leather chairs. Professional smiles barely masked their discomfort. We've received a concern, one began. Just a procedural check. Nothing formal yet. Yet. I kept my expression neutral as they asked about my performance, how long I'd been training, whether I had outside coaching. I answered calmly, giving them what they wanted. Timelines, training details, everything down to the type of drills Caleb had taught me years ago. I even pulled out my worn old training logbook from my duffel, the one Caleb insisted I keep back when I thought shooting was just a hobby. Dates, scores, notes, hard evidence. The man flipped through it, his brow furrowing, then relaxing slightly. This all looks in order, he said after a pause. Of course it did. Valerie could throw all the mud she wanted, it wouldn't stick. When they finally dismissed me, I stood, smoothing the front of my jacket with steady hands. As I exited into the main hall, Valerie was waiting, pretending to check her phone, pretending not to care. I walked right past her, slow and steady, locking eyes for just a beat longer than necessary. No smile this time, no words. Just a message, clear and sharp as a bullet. You came for me. Now I'm coming for you. The sunset poured gold across the concrete as the final call came through the loudspeakers. Final round, competitors, to your lanes. I slipped my gloves back on, my movements slow and deliberate, feeling the weight of every step as I made my way back to lane 12. The energy around me had shifted, not just suspicion anymore, but something sharper. Anticipation. This was it. No second chances, no excuses. Just me, the target, and every scar that had led me here. I took my stance, grounding myself. Deep breath, release. The world narrowed to the line of my sight, the steady grip in my palms, the beat of my own heart syncing with the final countdown. 3 shots in, bullseye. 6 shots, still center mass. 12, 15, 20. Each round hit home with a crisp, satisfying crack. The crowd grew quieter with every hit, until the air was thick with a kind of stunned reverence. Even the officials edged closer to the scoring screens, eyebrows climbing higher after every confirmation. The last shot. I paused, lowering the muzzle slightly to reset my breath, feeling every muscle and memory and buried battle snap into place inside me like puzzle pieces. I raised the Glock, squeezed. Dead center. The hall stayed silent for a long, suspended moment before the applause broke out sharp and genuine, not the forced politeness I had known all my life. I set the gun down carefully, blinking hard against the sudden burn behind my eyes. Not from sadness, not even from relief, from something deeper, vindication. I caught movement out of the corner of my eye, Valerie standing frozen at the edge of the crowd, her mouth slightly open, as if she'd forgotten how to close it. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. I didn't look back as I walked toward the judges' table. Senator Hollis, in his crisp navy suit and campaign pin, leaned into the microphone, his voice booming clear across the club. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to announce with a new club record score, Miss Donna Shipman, first place." The room erupted. I barely heard it. The sound felt distant, like ocean waves in my ears. My knees wobbled for a second, but I stayed upright, refusing to stumble now. As the crowd surged around me, I scanned the faces, strangers mostly, a few polite acquaintances, some surprised smiles, but no Valerie. She was gone. Not even a goodbye. And somehow that small absence hit harder than the applause. Victory wasn't supposed to feel lonely, but I was about to learn endings weren't always celebrations. The ride home was a blur of headlights and muted streetlights. I didn't bother turning on the radio. The silence felt earned. By the time I unlocked my apartment door, night had fully settled over Boise. The air smelled faintly of rain and pavement, sharp, clean, like a world washed new. I stepped inside, dropping my keys onto the counter with a hollow clink. My jacket followed, tossed over the back of the nearest chair. In my other hand, the medal and certificate dangled limply, still warm from my grip. Without ceremony, I placed them on the kitchen counter. Not in a frame, not on a shelf. Just there. Proof, for no one but myself. The apartment felt smaller tonight. Or maybe I just felt bigger inside it. I made my way to the worn couch, sinking down into the cushions. The hum of the city filtered through the windows, distant sirens, the occasional bark of a dog. Life going on, indifferent to victories or failures. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I almost ignored it. Almost. But habit won out. I reached for it, thumb swiping across the screen. Valerie. Of course. A flood of texts, one after another, angry and bitter. "You think you're better than us now? Don't forget where you came from. You humiliated the family. Enjoy it while it lasts, princess." Each message more acidic than the last, dripping resentment and warped pride. I stared at the screen for a long moment, feeling nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just a tired, deep certainty. This was who she'd always been. I had just stopped pretending otherwise. Without replying, I pressed down on the thread. Delete conversation? I tapped yes. A second prompt. Are you sure? Another tap. Gone. One by one, I deleted the others too, the old voicemails, the saved pictures, the emails I'd told myself I'd reread someday to find clues. All of it. Erased. Not out of spite, not out of hate, out of mercy for myself. I set the phone down gently, then stood and wandered over to the window. The city sprawled out beneath me, lights blinking steady and stubborn against the night. I leaned my forehead against the cool glass, letting the quiet settle around me like a second skin. The wounds weren't healed. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. But for the first time in years, they felt like scars, not open cuts. I wasn't waiting for anyone's applause anymore. I wasn't chasing anyone's love. I was just here, whole enough, free enough. Not all victories come with parades. Some just come with silence and freedom. As I stand here now, looking back over everything, I realize something I wish I'd understood years ago. You don't need anyone else's permission to be enough. You don't need their applause to be worthy. The people who choose to walk away, let them. The people who try to tear you down, let them try. What matters is that you keep standing. Keep showing up for yourself even when the seats around you are empty, even when the voices try to drown you out. Because strength isn't something anyone can hand you. It's something you build, one hard day at a time, one silent victory after another. And if my story can remind you of anything, let it be this. Your value was never up for debate. Not then, not now, not ever. I would love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever faced a moment when you had to stand alone? How did it shape you? Share your story in the comments. Let's build a space where resilience is celebrated. If this story touched your heart, even just a little, leave a comment with a 1, or let me know where you're tuning in from. And if you didn't connect with it, tell me why your voice matters here. And hey, if you'd like to hear more real, raw stories about strength, growth, and finding your voice, don't forget to subscribe and join this community. There's a lot more to come, and I can't wait to walk this journey with you.